Hi Lake Grove family, Pastor Lillian here. Today's devotional we are in story 203 that corresponds with Daniel chapter 2 verse 1 to 13. Well, I think it's safe to say that by now we know a person does not have to be righteous for God to use them. Think of people like Samson or Saul. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon is no different. In fact, in Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 9, it says, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, my servant. God calls Nebuchadnezzar my servant. God guides Nebuchadnezzar's path to fulfill his purposes for Israel. Now, here in our passage today is a perfect example how God uses someone who is not righteous for his purposes. God gave Daniel a special skill, a natural ability to interpret dreams. This was a skill that was highly sought after and valued in Babylon. Well, if this were a movie with a story and a plot, here is the narrative structure. We've been introduced to the main characters. We have King Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel, and his three friends. The setting is in the king's court, and the event is a disturbing nightmare. Now, the key conflict is that Nebuchadnezzar has selected Daniel and his friends as the wisest and most trustworthy. And for some reason, and we're not told why, this wise foursome aren't in the court. Maybe even not in the city. And it's at this point that the king has a nightmare. And this nightmare is so perturbing that he demands an interpretation. Have you ever had a dream that you're unable to forget? You're startled awake and you can hardly remember the details of the dream. But you know you had it, and your heart is pounding, and you might be sweating, and your blanket is somehow intertwined and twisted and curled around your body, and you feel disturbed. Well, those are the kind of nightmares that affect you, like psychologically affect you, right? And you somehow, for some reason, carry it with you throughout the day, and it pretty much ruins the rest of your day. Well, for quick-tempered Nebuchadnezzar, it was no different. He could not remember the details of his dream and did not understand its meaning. But it had left him so disturbed he needed an interpretation. And so the king demanded the impossible. He demanded an impossible task. How could anyone tell him his dream and then interpret it? Well, God was not surprised by Nebuchadnezzar's rage and murderous threat to execute all the wise men in his court. Instead, when we consider this story, God may have raised the stakes, because if Daniel and his friends were in the court when Nebuchadnezzar first confronted his wise men, their lives would have been spared. No lives would have been threatened. So now, with an impossible task at hand, with their lives on the table, God is positioned to move, to make the impossible possible. What was the dream? Well, you'll have to read it on and find out in tomorrow's reading. But for now, for today, I want us to consider Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1. And in Proverbs it says this, "The king's heart is like channels of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he wishes." Dr. Charles Stanley, encourages us to remember God is able to direct the hearts of any leader. He says, when the news threatens to dislodge our peace or cause despair, remember who holds the nations and rulers in his hand. The Lord's plans for this world are moving along according to his divine purposes, and no unrighteous ruler can thwart the Lord. So today, let's remember, God's got the whole world in his hands. Whether you sing it out loud or in your heart, throughout the day, join me in singing. He's got the whole world in his hands.